Candice, it's so great to see you and to meet you in person. I have to add a little bit to the bio there and say that we share a South London something. I'm not fully from South London, but it's sort of home. Well, it is home when I go back to England. And we both worked in publishing. There's a wonderful book called New Daughters of Africa. It's an anthology of writings from women of African descent, and we're both in that. And I had to look up if your star sign was compatible with my star sign, because I'd heard that star signs are important, and apparently we're very compatible, which makes me... I'm not going to go into the details in case you contradict me.
What's your star sign?
Pisces.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
I love a Pisces.
So,
yeah,
okay.
this is nice. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
For a moment, I thought, have I got the wrong information? But Candice, welcome to the Bay Area. Welcome to San Francisco.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for coming. It's lovely to see you.
So this, I think, is the last stop in your tour.
Yes.
How has it gone?
It's been really good. I'm sorry, I'm really aware of this microphone. I'm like, where should I go? Okay, how is that? Good. I feel like it was good before. I'm quite good at projecting. It's been good, thank you. But this is number 8. And actually, what an amazing place to end, and what like a nice energy to be in. San Francisco is really nice. I've never been. I'm just having a really nice time.
But you've hardly had any time, so you've got to come back to actually see it and then go around the Bay Area.
Yes, I will. I did ride along. I rode across the Golden Gate Bridge and back again today, which was incredible. Yeah. Such a thing. It's very hilly, my God, but it was worth it.
Well, I have to say, as I was preparing to talk to you and reading this wonderful new book, I went back to Queenie, and I was saying earlier that I listened to it on being as an audiobook. So those of you who like audiobooks, the audiobook version of Queenie is also phenomenal. I don't know if the same narrator will do this one.
So a different narrator's done this one, but then the same one did a different version, which has nothing to do with me. Very strange, but she got to do it again, which is great for her.
Okay.
And for me.
Okay, that's good.
It's a different format. I think it's for the BBC.
Okay. How many have read Queenie here? Okay. So
thanks, everyone.
So he's real fans. So as I was revisiting Queenie, I couldn't help but think of Queenie and the Queen and the Queen's funeral in England. There's also in Queenie, those who've read Queenie know that there's a WhatsApp group called the Corgis, and I saw a picture of the Queen's Corgis, and my mind immediately went to Queenie.
Aww,
and
yeah.
And I wondered, well, first of all, I wondered, had the Queen read Queenie? Because I think she should have. Will we ever know?
Maybe that's what killed her. That actually might be treason, so cut that out of the video.
No, I think it would have extended her life, frankly. Anyway, I was thinking of you and what it was like to be in America as all of this is going on in England, because I did find myself feeling thousands of miles away in every respect.
It's interesting. When I landed in New York initially, and my taxi driver was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, what's happened?" And he was like, "The Queen." And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm okay, thanks." And then I had a lot of that because I've had to do a lot of like Ubering around to get to places, and everyone has I say anything and they're like, "Oh, the Queen, are you okay?" And I'm usually like, "Well, I'm not really into the monarchy at all." And then there was one guy when I was in like Missoula, Montana, which is just like very, very far away, and he was like, "I'm devastated. I went to her pearl celebration with my wife, and I could tell that wasn't the right person for me to be like, I'm not into the monarchy too." So I had to be like, "I'm devastated." And he was like, "Oh, thank God, because I'm in bits," and we had to fake bond over that. But it's been a lot. I've had a lot of conversations about it, but it's funny.
I think probably just hearing your accent was really soothing and probably helpful.
Yeah.
So
healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pleased.
Anyway, moving from Queenie to this wonderful book, People Person. Evan gave a brief synopsis, but I would like you to tell us all, for those who haven't had the joy of reading this yet, to give us a little bit of a summary and maybe talk about the book through its amazing title, and cover. This is such a brilliant title. You have brilliant title and cover. You have such beautiful, beautiful covers for your books.
Thank you. So do
So
you.
talk a little bit about the cover and the title as it relates to what's between.
The pages. Thank you very much for the compliment. So I don't like jazz, which is a very weird way to start off what I'm explaining about, but you'll get it when I get there. I don't like jazz, but a friend of mine made me go and see her uncle in this jazz show. She dragged me along, and I think I was in my mid-20s, so I was like, oh, I don't want to be here, because that's what you do when you're in your mid-20s. And he was like, the next song is People Person, and I was like, oh, what a nice word selection. And then the song was incredible. And so I think those two things were like, you clearly don't hate jazz, you're just stroppy. And also, like, it stuck in my head that was such a beautiful phrase. And then I think for a long time I just thought about what being a people person meant. And there are two versions of being a people person, which I've kind of spoken about in the novel. And so, yeah, this is a novel about 5 siblings and their 4 mothers. And also very much their dad, Cyril, who is this person who is meant to kind of connect them, but he doesn't connect them. Instead, it's Dimple, who is the main character, who's kind of the middle child, if there was a sort of family structure. And it's about all of these siblings having to come together and kind of meet and figure out who they are and who they are in conjunction to each other and their dad, because something has happened in Dimple's life that they need to sort out. If
That's great. I wanted you to give the summary because I didn't want to give anything away. There's so many twists and turns, so no spoilers. And I'm sort of smiling to myself because before we came out, I said to Candice, is there anything you don't want to, well, it's true. I said, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And I thought she'll definitely read from the book because I want everyone to get a flavor sense. But that's something she won't do. So I have to. So here I am. I'm going to try and wing it because I just want people to get a tiny flavor. Luckily, I have the accent, I think, or an accent. So I will begin. And the reason why I want everyone to hear a little bit is because this is honestly one of the best first chapters of any novel I've read.
Oh my God, come on.
It is so... I'm not saying all the chapters are the best 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th chapters, but this first chapter...
Well, you could have left that out. Yeah. All right.
So, I'm saying it's all brilliant, but I love chapter 1.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to wing it here and probably read the first chapter and maybe a little bit more. You mentioned Cyril, the father character, who is phenomenal. So I'll read a little bit so you get a flavour.
I will enjoy this so much.
No pressure. Chapter 1. Their father, Cyril Pennington, was not a discriminatory man. He had 5 children. 5 children that he claimed with 4 different women. Though claiming isn't the same as paying child support or being physically, mentally, or emotionally present. Claiming, in Cyril Pennington's way, was being generally aware that he had 5 children, and possibly more, but he wasn't going to go looking. Remembering their names and sometimes their birthdays, and asking them for money when times were hard. He worked as a bus driver, spending his days doing very little in addition to his job, but flirting with passengers, chasing women much too young for him, and playing dominoes with his acquaintances at the barber shop near the bus garage. Although he was unknowingly a master of detachment, Cyril saw himself as more of a people person than a father. Sadly, for his children, this sociability didn't extend to the 5 of them in a way that was mutually beneficial. And then there's a description of the 5, but I'm going to skip over that a little bit because I want to talk about just the way that you write with humor, and I have a feeling that if I jump here, we'll get even more of a sense of that. And those of you who've read Queenie have a sense of this already. So I've skipped a bit of that first chapter. One day, when all his children were of what he believed to be approaching courting age, apart from Prince, who was 9, Cyril decided that this day, this Saturday, would be the day they all met. He jumped out of the bed that sat in the corner of his little studio flat, padded over to the window and pulled aside the sheet he'd been using as a curtain for the last 3 years. The sun was shining, and the sky was as blue as the sea he remembered from back home. He loved days like this. His mood was entirely dependent on the weather, though he didn't know why. If he ever let his mind roam to interrogating any possible reasons, he chalked it up to missing the sun he'd known on his skin every day when he'd grown up in Jamaica. Things were very simple to Cyril, so if you said the term seasonal affective disorder to him, he'd start a fight with you and accuse you of trying to put a spell on him. He went into the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, and brushed his teeth. He only had one full front tooth, plated in gold. Of the other front tooth, he only had half. He always told women that he'd lost the other half in a fight, when actually he'd fallen over when he was drunk and smashed his face on the steps, going up to his flat. He swilled water round his mouth, spat it out, and smiled at his reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink. He decided that today was going to be a good day. Cyril left the bathroom and sauntered over to the sound system that took up most of his living space. A record player he'd won in a game of cards, hooked up to 3 once-broken speakers that he'd found outside a nightclub, convincing a friend to help him carry them home. He flipped through his prized record collection, deciding that this morning he was in the mood for some Johnny Nash. He took time and care to remove the record from its sleeve, then its plastic sheath, balancing it delicately between his thick, otherwise clumsy fingers. He smiled as he lowered it down onto the platter, feeling the same buzz he felt every time he lifted the needle slowly from its place and dropped it on the spinning disc. The crackle of the vinyl felt like a balm to his soul, and when the music began, Cyril felt his whole body relax. The shower in his house was broken, and he hadn't remembered to pay the gas bill on time, so Cyril had a bucket bath with some hot water from the kettle. The electricity bill was always paid on time because Cyril couldn't live without music, and it wasn't like he minded not having hot water. This way, he was reminded of bathing back home. When he'd first come to London, the functionality of a shower was so luxurious to him that he almost didn't trust it. After his bucket bath, he moved across his little flat, towel around his waist, the once taut stomach that had been threatening to become a potbelly for a little while, peeking over the top of it. He took his time moisturizing himself before he got dressed, opting for a pair of black trousers with a black leather belt and a salmon red short-sleeved shirt. He liked his shirt a lot. He couldn't remember which woman had given it to him, but he knew he definitely didn't buy it himself. He finished his look with a small gold chain. From it hung a cross pendant from his mother that dangled down between the space where his pecs had once been. When he was fully dressed, Cyril danced small steps around his flat until the needle lifted itself off the vinyl and signified that it was time to leave for the day. That was how Cyril did things. He tried not to rely too much on actual time, more on feeling, on instinct, how the world was moving around him. How he had kept a job was a mystery to everybody who knew him, especially his employers. Cyril left his flat, carefully locking the door behind him lest anyone broke in and stole anything to do with his music. He strutted down the steps to the ground floor, left the building, an old Georgian house that had been converted into way too many flats, and smiled widely at the postman coming up the path. "Anything for me, Bill?" Cyril asked the postman. "Unless it's bills you bring me, Bill, you can't keep them." See, you should have been reading this. The postman, a white man named William with a curious mustache, laughed politely, shook his head and shrugged his shoulders at the same time. It wasn't that Cyril's accent, one that he'd refused to drop since he'd arrived in England decades ago, was particularly strong, but William still had no idea what he was saying to him, even though they'd spoken to each other in some way pretty much every day for the last year. Cyril climbed into his vehicle, a shining gold Jeep. It was his pride and joy. Most, if not all, of the money he should have spent on child support or even living slightly more comfortably was spent on his gold Jeep. He truly loved it more than anything else in his life, and he didn't see a problem with that. He put the key into the ignition, wound the windows down, and slid a reggae mix CD he'd gotten at the barber shop into the drive. Before he took off In a debus by Professor Nuts blasting through the speaker, he pulled the sun visor down and smiled at his reflection in the mirror, his gold tooth glinting back at him. "You is handsome man, Cyril," he said to himself. He was definitely not a man who needed lessons in self-love. And I just was, this is the song that he has as he's drives away, if it's going to play. Because you got to have the music as well. But see, this thing is not doing anything for me. It's just failing me just when I had thought I had it lined up. Anyway, you got to just imagine the music. That's a bit pathetic. I'm going to stop there. So there wasn't, I chose a passage that didn't have a lot of humor in it, but the description was so rich and so beautiful, and this character lifts off the page, and so of course you want to know more about this character. Talk to us, even though I didn't read a passage that was full of your classic, amazing humor. Talk to us about humor, and many of you read Queenie, so you've got a sense of it already. How do you write humor so well, and what role do you see it playing in your novels?
Thank you for the compliment, and thank you for reading. That was very good. My Jamaican accent is terrible, even though I'm Jamaican, so don't worry about it. You did well. You did better than I could have done. Comedy. So basically, when I was growing up, there's a lot of like drama in my family, and my nan would always be very dramatic, but she'd always say to me, "If you don't laugh at things, you'll cry." And so I've kind of just grown up being like, okay, well, you just have to laugh at stuff, which is probably a trauma response, but that's fine. And so that, of course, kind of had to make itself like known in my work, because I think I write how I talk and I talk how I think. And I think sometimes there should be more steps between like what comes out of my mouth or onto the page, but there's not. And so, yeah, it just feels like a very natural way of communicating. And I think that whenever I write, so even in Queenie and in People Person, because I'm always I'm always trying to talk about the things that mattered to me and the things that I feel. And so obviously in Queenie, it was, there was a load of stuff, because I was like 25 and I was really angry because I was like, the world is horrible. It treats everyone really badly. And then with this, it was kind of, I really wanted to start talking about the police and the police system and how distrustful Black people are of it as an institution, and exactly why. But I never want to be didactic in my work. I never want to be like, this is the fact, this is why you should hear what I'm saying. I kind of want to sort of smooth it out with humor, if that makes sense. So I kind of trick you into hearing what I've got to say by making you laugh.
In many ways, as I read your work, I have echoes of Andrea Levy's work, echoes of Bernardine Evaristo, particularly Mr. Loverman, particularly with that character, and Zadie Smith. These are all writers of an older generation. I'm just curious about, were they inspirational to you coming up?
I read them all. I've read very widely. I've always read very widely, but I know that when I started writing, I really wanted to, I guess, talk about the very present, if that makes sense. So I think that I'm always respectful of who has come before and who has paved the way and who has kind of made it so that the space means that I can also be in the space. But I read like so widely, and I think that actually someone once said to me, don't take this the wrong way, but your writing reminds me of Adrian Mole by Sue Townsend. And I was like, yeah, because like that's one of my like, I don't know. So it's like, I get that all of these amazing Black women have paved the way, but it's also just like I grew up reading loads of these, like Judy Blume, like that was like my Virginia Andrews, like I've read so widely. And so it's kind of like the bits and pieces that I may have taken are just from everywhere. But yeah, Sue Townsend, that was like the best compliment I've ever had in my life. Yeah. So like, yeah, the space is there, but also I think it's come from everywhere.
So you mentioned earlier about how when you were writing Queenie, you were angry and the world is a mess. I mean, it's maybe even more a mess.
Yeah.
And how you, in this book, one of the things that you're shining a light on, maybe not didactically, but in a subtle, powerful way, is sort of relationships with the police. And I wonder if you can talk about that in the American context. So I don't want to generalize, but I'm assuming that if most of us are Americans, we haven't heard about, what things are like in England. There's recently a case with Chris Hubber. And you mentioned someone as well in passing in the book. So I wonder if you can say a little bit more about that for an audience who may not.
Yeah, of course. I mean, actually, when I was writing Queenie, I referenced Philando Castile because I remember that was one of the first, I want to call it a murder, one of the first murders that actually made it into the UK mainstream. And this has been happening for years and years and years and years and years. And I remember seeing all of the stuff that was happening on Tumblr, because that was where people were talking about it. And I was always completely confused as to why people weren't talking about it in our mainstream news. But also, it's a problem here, but it's also a massive problem back home. I think racism as a thing is a massive problem back home, and it is so institutionalized in every single way. And it isn't as necessarily blatant. And also we have different gun laws there, but still people get shot. And so, Mark Duggan, that's another huge, a huge loss to the community and to, I guess, to everyone feeling like they could trust an institution that was meant to look after us. And so, it's not as commonplace that someone gets shot by the police in England, but when it does happen, we absolutely feel it, and we march and we're in pain. And it's a shock, and it isn't, which is really, really sad. And so, just thinking about how, I remember thinking to myself, and when I was having kind of ideas for this novel, if something happened to me, I wouldn't call the police. I wouldn't. I would call someone else that I need to sort some things out. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't. It's not the police who I would call, because I don't trust them, and actually I feel afraid of them more than anything. And they're meant to look after us.
And we see that in this book. But it's interesting how, I think in England we're talking about a police system, we're talking about racism that's systemic. And I think there's been a new police chief recently who might change things. But I think up until recently, it's been, there are just a few bad apples in the police force, and not really focusing on the systemic nature of racism in the police force.
Yeah, and it's been really hard to see. And again, it's been really hard to be protected. And actually, so our old police chief was a woman called Cressida Dick, and I remember being at this inspirational woman dinner, and she was at my table, and I was like, there are so many things I want to say to you, but also I don't want to be seen as an angry black woman, so I just had to swallow it all. And I was like, this is probably one of the worst moral positions I'd ever been in my life. And so I just had to get up and walk away because it was really hard. And then I went and spoke to Stephen Lawrence's mum, and Stephen Lawrence is a young man who was murdered by a group of racist white men in the 90s. It was in the 90s. And the police basically just fobbed his family off for years and years and years and years and covered it up. And his mum is an activist now. So I spoke to her, and that was kind of a reset and kind of address things. But it's an interesting thing living in the UK. It's not easy.
Well, let's come back to the book and talk about Dimple.
Yes.
It's a fabulous name. Dimple, as Evan alluded to, is an influencer, social media, or wannabe.
She'd like to be. She'd really like to be. So she obviously counts her followers obsessively. She's somewhere around 100, and still, every day she's like, one more, that's great. And so I really wanted to talk, I guess, about the role that social media plays in the lives of people, obviously, but also someone who doesn't have many friends. So she doesn't have many friends, which is why her siblings are so able to kind of have space to enter her life. But also, I guess the main thing I was looking at as well in terms of Dimple was the validation that she seeks, because all of these people, all of these 5 characters who I've sort of, I guess, put them all separately, and I've sort of paced them out so we understand what we do about them in different ways, and we come at them in different ways, and we come at them at different points, but they all are seeking something, and they all feel like they're missing something because their dad was missing in their life. And so Dimple, I guess, is my most explicit way of being like, you are constantly seeking validation when you are missing what you believe is something that is going to fulfill you. And so that for me was like, I guess the easiest way to show just the smallest effects of just growing up in a single parent household and being like, I need everyone to like me, and I need that to be measured in numbers.
I'm really curious about your own relationship with social media and how it might have changed from before Queenie was published, and then the reception that Queenie had, and then has it changed your relationship to social media?
Not really. I've always been, I think because I'm 33, so I missed the generation of people who were like really obsessed with it and like need it to survive. And so my relationship has always been kind of similar. It's kind of like I'm in and I'm out. And so like I've had the same, I don't have like author social media. And actually the only thing that was different is me having to, when I got more followers, having to say to my friends and family, am I okay to post you because people might follow you? And they were like, oh yeah, that's fine. And so that's been the only thing. But I just think it's funny, and I don't think I take it seriously enough. And like one of the things that I find really hard, and that I have had arguments with my publisher about, is they'll be like, can you post this? Can you post that? And I'm like, no, not really. Because it's like, this is my life, and this is like fun stuff and nice stuff. So sorry, I don't have COVID. I checked after, I just did a test. They were like, can you post like the entire tour, and can you do like a rundown? And I was like, no, but I can like say where I am, and I can like say if I'm having fun. But like, yeah, if you go on my story, you will see me riding over the Golden Gate Bridge because that's funny. But like, you know, I don't know. I just think I don't take it seriously enough because I don't care.
Okay. I want to ask you another thing about sort of related to publishing, which is you worked in publishing, if I'm understanding correctly. So how did that prepare you for the publication of your first book, or did it at all? Or second novel? Or did it push you towards writing? What was the...
Well, I think because I started the social media... I started the Short Story Prize.
Yes. So
because I was working in publishing.
Can you tell everyone about that?
So the Short Story Prize, which is the Fourth Estate, which is the imprint that I worked in, which is HarperCollins in the UK. We partnered with the Guardian newspaper to create a short story prize because I was 23 and I started working in publishing, and I was like, okay, I'm working on loads of cool stuff. I'm working on like Nigel Slater and like Hilary Mantel and like David Cronenberg and all of these cool people. But I was like, I'm not reading anything that I can see myself in. And I was like, okay, well, I'll work here enough and then like it will start coming through. And then it wasn't coming through. And so obviously like when you work in publishing, you see all the submissions, you see what's like coming in, what editors are being like, yeah, we want to work on that. And there was so rarely anything that I could like connect with at all. I think the only thing was a book by an author called Sefi Atta, and then Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And that was 2 books, and I was working there for years. And so I was like, what's going on here? And I tried to figure out, and I was like, well, the people who are buying the books are the editors, and the editors are getting sent stuff from agents. And I was like, well, what if people don't know what an agent is? And so I was like, if I create a prize, then people can just submit a story, and then we can read it and see what we like and see what's good. And so I had to ask kind of permission and be like, can I do that? And they were like, yeah, do what you want. And so I did it, and I had loads of welcome, come in. And I had loads of fun doing it. It was like a really nice thing. And I read so many incredible short stories that went on to either be published in things. And like one of the authors, he's called Guy Gunaratney, he was shortlisted or longlisted for the Booker Prize. And it's like, yeah, because like the writing is out there. Anyway, so I started this prize, but I think because things weren't moving quickly enough, and I'm quite an impatient person, I was like, why don't you write something? And so I wrote Queenie because I knew that it wasn't there and it wasn't coming. And so I used that knowledge, I guess. And also just, yeah, I guess like the propulsion to do it came from just wanting to see change in a really quick way. And obviously, like 6 years later, Queenie came out, but like, that I knew it was coming was enough.
No, Thank you for doing that, and that's a big thing, and well done.
Thank you.
I just glanced at my watch, and I can't believe so much time has already passed. So I'm just going to ask one more thing and then open it up to everyone. But if you don't have questions, and I see USF is well represented here, it's lovely. If you don't have questions, then I've got many more to ask.
Thank you.
But earlier we were talking about something that you're really immersed in now. You're working on a script on something for TV.
Yes.
Can you say very much about that, and what's it like moving from writing novels to working on a script?
Yes, so I'm a showrunner actually, which is hard work for a TV show called Champion, which is going to be on BBC One in the UK and Netflix here or everywhere else if you want to watch it.
So I'm kind of nodding my head. Maybe everyone knows exactly what a showrunner does.
Oh, okay, everything, which is a nightmare. So like Shonda Rhimes is the original showrunner basically.
Oh, so you're Shonda
and
Rhimes.
So I'm basically, no, not at all. I wish. So that's an example of one. And I think it's about I'm across like every single episode. It's like it has live music. So like I'm also like the head of all the like music.
Wow.
And so yeah, and just like constantly having conversations about just basically being like, is everything working across the whole series? And so yeah, that is really, really tough. And actually writing script is so different to writing novels, because when you're writing script, there are about 10 people who are interrogating every single line of writing, whereas with your novel you can just be like, hi, here's a novel, and your editor is like, change that, and that, and you're like, yep, done that, there you go, and then it's on the shelves basically. I don't know if your experiences were the same. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about you, but yeah.
Well, you know. But with this, it's very different. And also, I'm working on the adaptation of Queenie, which is even harder because it exists as a thing. And then you have all these people being like, no, we want to do this with it. And you're like, but that changes it. And so, yeah, doing that. So TV is a hard place to be. I think you have to really, you've got to really gear yourself up every single day to do that. But it's worth it. It's worth it. Everything is worth it, you know?
Okay, so what's this called, and when does it come out? When do we get to see it?
This is called Champion, and it's out, I think, next year. We're filming it now, so hopefully it's out next year.
Great.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to pause now to give other people a chance to ask questions.
Yeah, so I have a mic here. I will walk around. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and don't be shy. It's so that people on the internet, when they watch this video later, they can hear you, and so we all can hear you too. I also have questions, but I don't want to lead off, so.
I love questions. I never know if people are shy or they just don't have questions. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Shy, but do have a question.
Okay, great.
I was just curious. Loved Queenie. Looking forward to reading People Person.
Thank you.
Curious about how your writing process changed from Queenie to People Person to whatever you're currently working on. How it's evolved over time.
Thank you. That's a great question. It's worth it. Worth pushing through the shyness. Thank you. Queenie was like, again, like 25. I was much braver. It was a big burst of energy, and it was like came from all this feeling. And I think I wrote maybe 8,000 words of it in the first night. And then in like the first week, I'd written 40,000 words because I was just like, get it out. And then I kind of honed it and added to it over the next maybe 6 months or so. And so that was like, I was a baby, I think, because I was that young, and I was just like, I like stories, and so I think I know what a story could be. And of course I had an editor who helped me shape it. And then when it came to People Person, time had passed, and I'd read more, and I'd written more, and I'd written on scripts a lot. And so like you are used to interrogating every single line you write. And so with People Person, it was just really measured. And so I had the same kind of, I would still write a lot at a time. So when I started writing it, I wrote 10,000 words. So the opening is like, that was the thing that I wrote in like one burst, I think from midnight until like 7 a.m, because I was just like, just get it out and then like do this novel. But then as time went past, I could just be like very measured with it, and I could be like, this is what I want to say, this is how I'm intending to say it, rather than just being like, I'm always catching up with what I'm writing and what I'm feeling. So yeah, I think I'm just kind of like, I can take my time a bit more now and know that what I'm saying is like really intentional. But also, again, when I wrote Queenie, I didn't realize there'd be an audience for it. And when I wrote this, I was like, people will read this now. You know that for a fact. So I had to not have that in my head too much. For sure, I had to just be like, just imagine it's for yourself. Thank you.
Next question. I'll go ahead and ask then. I'm really curious how you developed your characters. Do you have an idea of like, you know, this character is going to be like this or represent this in this like equation? Your character, like, I just love spending time with all of them, and I'm wondering if you like develop them kind of off of each other, or if do you like outline your characters? How do you do that?
Thank you very much. I go via star signs, actually, as we mentioned earlier. And so I don't know what their names are going to be most of the time, but I'm just like, I know that if I want 5 people who I know from experience and not going to get on, I want to give them all these different star signs and then put them in a room together. And so that's what I did with the 5 characters. And so it made it really easy for me to be like, who's not going to get on with who, and who's going to connect with who, and who's going to bond with who, and who is going to fall out with who, because I was like, this is what this kind of person would do. It's very much my framework for life, so it makes sense it would be my framework for like writing. But maybe it feels like I'm sort of cheating somehow by doing that, or maybe that it's like not real. I don't know, but yeah, so that's what I do.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you want to ask a question. Phew, I'm glad you do.
I know, yes, also shy. How much of or are there any characters that reflect yourself the most, or that you see yourself in the most, or is it scattered across all of them, and was that different from Queenie?
Thank you. That's a great question. I'm very glad you asked it. So Queenie, actually very different to me. Queenie is very different to me. And so when people would ask if I was her, I was like, what, are you serious? Like, this guy's absolutely crazy. And so, yeah, when it came to People Person, I had to kind of split my head in 5, actually. So all of these people are more similar to me than Queenie is, actually. And so I think because, and I've said this before, I've said this very openly, my dad also isn't around. And so I had so much to draw on, and so much emotion, so much feeling, and so much working out. And I was like, imagine how it would feel in all these different contexts if this was what you had to do and deal with. So it was, I guess, kind of like my way of working it through and understanding it. And I think that Queenie was my way of working through like the injustice in the world, but from someone else's lens. And this was like working out what it felt like to be like, where is this person that is meant to care about me or meant to be there? This person that I've always been told was meant to be there. So yeah, I think it was just being like, yeah, just take your brain and split it into different people, and then just like figure out how they're going to feel and how they're going to take that. Thank you for a great question. Everyone's got questions now.
So you mentioned earlier that you were reading a lot and all of that stuff. And I was wondering how, as someone who was reading so many different things, you found your own voice as a writer and did not just become an echo of all the different things you had just been coming across.
Thank you. Another good question. Wow. So actually, when I am writing myself, I don't read any fiction at all, just in case I ever accidentally take someone else's, like, I would never take someone's words on, but in case I take a voice on, don't even realize I've done it. And so I've been writing lots of scripts. And so now I've had a break from that. I've started reading again, so I can read fiction again, because I don't even want to do it when I'm writing scripts. And I'm currently reading, I don't know if anyone's read Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson, which is a really beautiful novel. I'm reading his second one now. And I was just like, today actually I was reading it and I just forgot, I lost all track of time when I was like on the plane. Suddenly I looked up and I was like, oh, I'm in San Francisco. And so, yeah, I try not to read anything that isn't my own writing when I'm actually writing. I can read some nonfiction, I think. Like, I think that's because that's kind of like a, not often, but like more of a neutral voice. And so, yeah, I tend to avoid in a big way, just in case. Yeah, I don't want to get wrapped up into that.
I'm going to throw in one more thing if there's not a question. So if you're like, oh no, then make sure you quickly ask after this. But one of the things that really struck me with both of your books is kind of a theme of characters wrestling, dealing with loneliness, and at the same time the power of the community and power of of a sisterhood as well. I mean, either blood sisterhood or half-blood sisterhood. It's just a really interesting sort of thematic, both loneliness but also the power of community. So I don't really have a question. I guess it's more of an observation about that runs through your book, and maybe what draws you to those.
It's interesting. I'm not a very lonely person because I like being by myself, but I do understand what loneliness can feel like, I think, because I think I've known it at points, and I think I've been able to work through that and settle in myself. And the ways that I've been able to do that are because I've had so many people around me who I know are there. And I think there's a shift when you realize that the people who are in your life are there for you, and they're your friends beyond just kind of like having a fun time. And so, yeah, I'm not someone who necessarily shares a lot with I never used to share a lot with my friends, because I would always be taught, like, you should just be strong and you should just like get over it and you'll just be fine. And then life got better when I was like, this thing has happened and it's made me sad, or I feel like embarrassed, I feel upset. And then like someone being like, that's all right, is amazing, because like I think that we're taught to not say stuff because it's embarrassing or because of shame. But I think as soon as you cast that off, things just kind of get a lot better. And so, yeah, I did spend a lot of years being quite lonely because I have so many feelings that I didn't ever know how to put them into words. And so I would just internalize it all and then just like struggle. But yeah, I've been taught by the people around me that like, that's ridiculous, I think now, And so, yeah, I think I'll always, that's a really nice observation, because they're things that I'll always write about, as I say, what I care about, as well as what I see and what I want to talk about. And that is one of my biggest learnings for life, I think.
I guess I could stand up a little bit. Hi, I loved Queenie.
Thank you very much.
And I know you're sharing a lot about yourself, so I'll share that my star sign is Capricorn.
Oh.
So if that says anything about me. And I was thinking about like your post today about the adaptation of Queenie and the kind of people that you're working with and the production houses, and a lot of them have been famously adapting books. And how are you feeling about that process? What are you envisioning or hoping for? Just kind of like, what are you manifesting for that, for your first book?
Thank you. Thank you for a great question. I'm hoping to I'm fine with like deviating from every single thing in the book, but I really want to be true to the people in the book and what they're saying and what they're doing. And so one of the conversations I had recently was about Queenie, and it was about like the casting, and obviously Queenie is Queenie, and then Darcy is like white British, and Cheske is Ugandan, and Cassandra is Jewish. And the conversation was had, it was like, oh, actually, does Darcy have to be white? And I was like, yes, because she's there for a reason, and all of her friends reason, they give her something different. And also in Queenie having to straddle these two cultures, Darcy is an integral part of that, because she also makes her feel very safe in that way. And so it's things like that I'm like, I'm not really willing to compromise. And so, yeah, I'm very heartstrong when it comes to stuff, and I can always, like, they're about, it's like, sort of like pick your battles, and it's like, there are definitely things that I'm like, yeah, I can change that and I can move that around, but there are so many things that I'm like, if it's there for a reason that I care about and a reason that I feel strongly about, then it's going to stay like that. And so, yeah, it's taken a long time for it to come out, because there have been lots of those conversations, and because I haven't given up, and I'm not going to give up, because I know that Queenie and the world of Queenie means a lot to people, and to give that away and to just be like, you can have like the world of the character but do what you want, I can't really do that. And so it's challenging for sure. And also there's like condensing a whole novel into 8 episodes and being like, yeah, how am I going to serve the story by doing that? But we found a way, and it's going to be good. But yeah, there's still a long way to go. But we start filming in January, so the scripts have got to be done. So I'll probably get my way till January, so that's good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Of course.
Hey, I'm a Taurus, so
I love this, by the way.
now that you are on your last stop of your book tour, wanted to get your opinions on like the differences of your U.S. readers versus UK.
Yes.
Like, I want your thoughts.
Absolutely. And I really like your jumper. I have had a really amazing time here. I think everyone here, the energy is so nice. Like, I always get such nice energy from people. I think London is quite a hard. So I live in London. I live in South London, but at the moment I'm living in somewhere called Birmingham, which you guys pronounce Birmingham, which I've been told a few times, for work. And it's really nice to be out of London, I realise, because actually London isn't always like the best vibes, just because like there's a lot going on, and it's quite it's an expensive city to live in. A lot of people are upset, and I think a lot of stuff kind of comes out day to day. And so I think like one of the things that when I've gone to New York, I remember people were being like, oh, you know, just be careful there, because, you know, something might happen. People are not very nice. But if I've ever been lost, someone's always come up to be like, do you need help? Are you okay? But in England, people would be like, move out the way. And so, like London in particular. And so it's like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like when I come here, it's weird that everyone is so nice. And especially because I am writing about like somewhere so specific, but everyone seems to have found like some nice connection to it and wants to ask me loads of questions. And so, yeah, it's really nice. And I will remember this whole tour for like the rest of my life, because it's been so amazing. So yeah, I've had a really, really good time. Yeah, I don't think I would do 8 different stops in England. No, I did like 2, and I was like, thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Callie. I was
And
hesitant.
you are
a shy person. Is that what you're asking?
Your zodiac sign. When is your birthday?
Oh, 26 July. I guess
Leo.
Is that Leo?
Nice. Congrats.
Thanks.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for asking. I was hesitant to ask a question because maybe you talked about it before because I came in late. But I'm curious about the choice of the title of the book, how it came across. Because when I saw it, the first thing I thought about was the short story Cat Person.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's probably nothing. It has nothing to do with that. But I don't know. I just wanted to, how did it come across? Was it after you finished everything? Did you switch? It was something else, or you knew since the beginning? Yeah. Okay, that was I will just condense it. So sorry to anyone who heard. It's a jazz song that I really liked, but also, and I can elaborate on this now. I was thinking about the different types of people person that exist in the world. So it made me think about that for a long time. And so Cyril, who is the dad in this, is a people person that he is gregarious, he's outgoing, he's really sociable, he thinks everyone is his friend, he thinks everyone loves him. And so the relationships that he has, though, in that people person way that he has, they don't really go beyond that sort of like, they're just all surface level, you know? And then there is someone like Dimple, who is his middle child, who is a people person in that she cares about people and she observes people and she wants to know they're okay. And so she's the sort of person who will remember something someone said years ago because she cares about that person and she wants to know that she's listened to them, if that makes sense. And so it was in thinking about all these different ways of people being people person, people, that I felt like that should be the right title for it, because I think the novel is a constant conversation about like what it is to be a people person and what that means. Because there was a world in which it was called like half or something, and I was like, that makes sense, but also like, what are you saying? And I'm kind of interrogating what it means to be a people person. And in the case of their dad, like, he's not a people person at all in the way that he thinks he is, because he's got these 5 children who would love to know him, but they never will because he doesn't know himself. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Maddie. I'm an Aries.
Oh my God, thank you, Maddie.
You're welcome. Everyone's very surprised when I tell them I'm an Aries for some reason. You spoke a little bit about your drafting process for Queenie. I wanted to hear about your creative and drafting process for People Person, if you could.
Yes, so So in terms of, thank you for asking, I tend to just write, and actually when I'm writing and in the process of like that first draft, I don't really look back. And so I feel like I always try to commit to what's on the page. And so my editor will be the one to come back and be like, I want you to change these things around and move these things around, and we'll have a conversation about that. But actually, I feel like because maybe it's like I don't think it's a stubborn thing, it's not very stubborn, but I think when I feel very strongly about my characters, I almost want to protect them. I want to protect what's happening. And so, yeah, I'm not a big drafting person. I'm a sort of like, this is just going to be what's going to be in the novel, which is very bold. But I think it's worked out quite well. So that's fine. But yeah, I don't know. I think, do you write? Is that what you're asking? What's your process, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't know, vibes based, I guess. I don't outline or anything. For me, I have blank page syndrome sometimes, so it really helps for me to just get a feeling or an emotion down and then work from there, or maybe like a line or like a character that I want to focus on, and then I'll go back and then start taking stuff out, because I include a lot of details that I don't feel like are necessary for the novel, or whatever I'm working on as a whole, but I feel like it's necessary for me to get an understanding of what is happening to the characters inwardly, or like how that relates to what is happening in the novel or whatever I'm working on.
That's really nice. So for a lot of it, you're kind of writing for yourself. You're building that world for yourself. That's really nice. I should do that. No, I tend to just like write what I really like dialogue. And so like my novels are all very dialogue heavy, because I just love conversations with people. And actually as a person, I don't really like public speaking because I just like to listen. So I've always listened. So when I was a kid, my mum has 4 sisters, and I would just grow up just hearing them talk about stuff I should never have been hearing. But like that was always like incredible. And so like I would just be really quiet, because I'd be like, if there's anything, they know that I'm here. And they just didn't care. But I've always kind of been taught that like, listen, you learn so much when you listen, and like you hear dynamics, and you hear like, I guess the subtext of what people are saying when you have been like listening actively like for such a young age. And so dialogue is my thing. And my editor, when I gave her the first version of People Person, she was like, I can tell you've been writing for TV because you haven't described anything. And I was like, all right. And so I had to go back and like describe stuff. But like actually, naturally, that's kind of what I do. So actually, I'm probably going to do some more world building next time I write. Thank you very much, Maddie. I think, can we get everyone to ask a question? That would be amazing.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I'm a Scorpio.
Wow, thanks.
My question has 2 parts. The first one is, are you thinking about what you're going to write next? And is there a genre that you'd like to maybe dip your toe into?
Great questions. So the genre that I would like to write is horror, because I love horror so much. Horror is my favorite thing ever. And so like, I like a lot of like high drama, but that's because it's like horror is basically that, but like personal terms, you know? And so I'm obsessed with zombies. And like whenever I go into any room, I know where to escape if zombies come in. So like I know that I can get out that way. Like I've always, in every single place that I'm in, I never sit with my back towards the door. Like that's making me quite uncomfortable. And so like, yeah, I just feel like it's naturally in me to write like a really intense end of the world zombie apocalypse one day. And then sadly I can't write that next because my editor won't let me do that. But so it's a toss up. Well, I don't know. So I would like to write about, when you read People Person, if you do, there is a relationship that Cyril has with the mothers of his kids. And when I wrote this, it was very much about the kids. But actually, as I wrote it, I found myself being like, I really want to explore those relationships back in the day. Because when we come to sort of Cyril and the mums of his kids, it's been like years. And so like, they all still have a lot of care for him. And it's like, so why is that? So like, let's go into what went on back then. but also Queenie is turning 30 technically, and so I'm like, do I want to go back to her? Am I ready to go back to her? So I've got to have a big think about that, because that's going to be, I think, to immerse myself back into that is going to be, I'll have to just shut myself away and like, yeah, because that deserves to be like, you know, I've got to do that justice. So yeah, I think, let's see, there's two things, but yeah, the idea of, because I've been working so collaboratively in TV, the idea of now just being like by myself again, it's quite scary, because I'm like, what do? I just have to sit and write by myself, and that's weird. So let's see. Thank you for asking.
Any other signs that have not yet been represented?
Oh, I don't know that you need that on live. No, it made me think that if you're creating the show, I don't know if there's a question in here, but you're creating the show for Queenie and then to go back to this character when she's become three-dimensional in a different way.
I know.
It's going to be interesting.
For TV or for the TV show? Or for
the
novel?
TV show, but then if you want to go back and write something else, because then people have this other view of her.
They do, but also people have a lot of ownership over her. And so at the moment, the thing I've kind of got to figure out is like not trying to serve everyone and everyone's thoughts that I've heard. And I'm really interested in, I have always been interested in commentary on Queenie, in critique on Queenie. Like I don't shy away from that. And actually, I find it really interesting how passionate people are. And actually, a lot of people are quite angry about some of the stuff she's done, and I'm like, she's not real. Like,
I just like the fact that she came through it on her own.
Yeah,
like that was the best part.
Yeah,
but I also think the grandmother is your nan like her nan.
Oh no, no, she's not. My nan, no. God, I love my nan so much. Oh, I miss her. She is not my nan. So Queenie's nan is a lot sharper tongued. My nan, literally every time I talk to her, is like, you need to understand that I love you more than anything in the world. And I'm always like, okay, cool, but like I love it. And she's always like, I don't like your aunts, I don't like your mum as much as I love you. And I'm always like, oh, I know, but then you tell everyone that and then they hate me. And so yeah, and actually, because my childhood was so like tumultuous, and my mum was not great and my dad was obviously not there, but I realized, I think through therapy, and I realized like the other day that the reason that I can be in any way confident or I'm able to just do stuff is because my nan would tell me all the time that like I was the best like for her, and that was enough, you know, because I grew up with her, spent a lot of time with her. But I really wanted to explore a grandma in Queenie who was just like very typically stern and was like, this is the line that we're drawing and you're not going to cross it, and I'm going to make you like clean, and I'm going to make you do all the stuff that I had to do when I was growing up. And you know, Queenie's grandma is always like, yeah, you might be going through heartbreak, but like I had to walk to school. And so it's like that frame of referencing that like, but my nan would never. My nan would be like, talk to me about everything that you're ever feeling. I'm always here. And that's really, really nice. So no, she's good, my nan. My middle name is my nan's name, Elaine. And I love her. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Shira. I'm with the Booksmith, and I'm an Aquarius.
Oh.
And I was just curious as to what you like to do outside of writing. I think that I love to hear, it's been so lovely to hear about the book, but also like conceptualizing you as a person and a human outside of this profession and this thing that you do so wonderfully.
Thank you for your question. That's really nice. What do I do? So I write genuinely all the time. So this is really nice as well, because I've had to say to everyone, I can't do any writing. You can't send me any scripts. Like I'm just off grid. And so actually when I'm not writing, I just watch a lot of music videos, and that sounds really strange, but I just really do. I really like to, I just think they're really nice, like 4 minutes of art and like little stories. And so I just do that, and I always go back to the same ones. So like my favorite one is Fresh by Kool and the Gang, because it's like Black Cinderella, and it's like Afrofuturism, weirdly. So like that's my favorite thing ever. So I watch that all the time. And my sister's had a baby who is 1, and so like that is where I go and get my joy from, because she's just 1, so she doesn't care about anything, and she's just always growing, and she's got like 4 teeth. And it's just that thing where I'm just like completely obsessed with her, and she doesn't understand like how much I love her yet. But yeah, she's just amazing. So yeah, I really am very chill. And I don't really go out a lot, but I like a party, but like within reason. But yeah, I just like music videos, like genuinely, and my niece, like that's it. Thank you.
Any final questions, or you guys want to get your book signed? Let's show some love for Candice, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if you need to get books still, Shira will be happy to sell them to you at the register. And then if you'd be kind enough to let Candice scoot by to the signing table before you shower her with adulation, that would be very kind of you. And yeah, make yourselves at home. All the books in here actually are for sale, and you're welcome to buy any of them, including Sarah's books, which are at the reg next to Candice's. I think your books are friends also. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Hope to see you all soon and often.